Hello there, I'm Ophir from France, and today I'd like to show you a cool piece of open source software I wrote. It's called SQLPage, and it lets you write dynamic web applications very quickly, entirely in SQL. I love writing web applications. A lot of problems in everyone's life could be solved just by collecting, organizing, analyzing, and acting upon data effectively. But writing a web app is a lot of work. If you want something that is useful and looks good, you traditionally have to master at least 5 languages: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, SQL, and one backend language such as Ruby or Python. More recently, a lot of no-code tools have emerged, but most are proprietary, expensive, and lack the ability to connect to an existing database or the flexibility to query your data the way you need. So I built what I think is a beautiful little piece of software that comes as a small single executable that you can run anywhere and host yourself for pennies. You run it, write a SQL query to fetch your data, and it displays it in one of its many professional-looking components. You can build anything from simple lists and tables to complex data visualizations, forms, maps, timelines, and more. It can connect to Postgres, MySQL, and Microsoft SQL Server. And the executable comes with a built-in SQLite database, so you can start building your app right away with 0 dependencies. At first, you may want to use it for quickly creating a view of your important data, but you will quickly find yourself building forms to insert and edit data, multiple interconnected pages with parameters, and more. Archaeologists have used it to survey excavated items. Transport companies have used it to build maintenance management for their trucks, educators to follow disabled children's needs, and much more. You don't need a lot of database experience to get started. And once you are in, it gets addictive because you can add features fast. The principle is easy. You write a query to select one of the built-in components by its name and optionally customize its appearance with additional parameters. Then you write a second SQL query that will populate the component with data. A simple web page could look just like select list as component, then select username as title from users. And that would display a list of users from the users table in the database. And it's just 2 tiny SQL queries. Then, when your users load a web page in their browser, your SQLPage server receives a request, finds the matching SQL file to execute on your server, associates URL parameters with the request to prepared statement parameters in your SQL queries, and renders the query results using the built-in or custom HTML component templates. The results processing and template rendering happen in a streaming fashion, so you can display even very large datasets with minimal resource usage. The SQL parameters binding logic is simple but quite powerful. It allows you to tie a page to a specific record in the database, process file uploads, make and receive HTTP API requests, read files, and more. Of course, you can't do everything you would do with multiple traditional programming languages, but it's quite powerful. And to give you an idea of what it can do, I'd like to show you a short demo. Let's build a to-do application together. Okay, so we are inside my computer now, and we'll start building. So I'm on SQLPage's website, sql.offier.dev, and I opened a new project in an editor, my text editor. So we'll start by downloading SQLPage. So I'll take the latest version for Linux, of course. I'll download it. Okay, here it is. I have it on my computer. It's 8 megabytes. I'll uncompress it. Okay, and I'm ready to go. I have SQLPage on my computer now. It had a few folders ready for me, a configuration file here. I have the archive that I can remove now and the SQLPage binary. So let's launch it and see what we have. So SQLPage.bin. Okay, here we go. SQLPage is now running on my computer on localhost port 8080. So let's see. Great. It works. I have SQLPage running, and so I made a query here from my browser, and it went to SQLPage, and SQLPage answered with a default welcome page. So let's replace that now. I want to start writing my own application. So I write a small SQL file from the default folder, and I'll call it index.sql so that it will replace the default welcome page. And let's say I select list as component, and I'll make a listed item. So let's start with a hello world. Select hello world as title, and let's see if it worked. Great. I have a list of one element, and it's called hello world. So what went on here? We first selected a SQLPage component. It opens the component, and then I can make a second SQL query that will return as many lines as I need in my list, and they will be displayed inside my list. So I can add a second item to my list just by selecting more data. So let's say number 2. Great. Okay, you see I didn't have to restart the SQLPage server. My changes here were taken into account here, and it worked. And if I need to know what to use, for instance, here I use the title attribute. Each component in SQLPage has its own list of attributes, and we can refer to the SQLPage documentation to know which component supports what. So here, for instance, I want the documentation for the list component. Okay, so this is the list of all the top level parameters we have. So the top level parameters are the parameters we have here alongside the select list as component. So for instance, I can add an ID. I can add a title to the entire list. And then I have the row level parameters that are the parameters inside each item of the list. So for instance, I want to add a title to the component itself. So I said it would be a to-do app. So I'll add a title and I'll call it to-do. Okay, so I have my list component, and now the list component itself should have a title. Okay, great. I have the title here. And here, it's a little bit boring at the moment because we are selecting static values, and I want to have a database. So let's create a database table for my to-dos and add data to it. So I'll create a migration and I'll call it 00 init. So 0 is the number of the migrations. They are going to be executed in order. And init.sql. And now I can create a table. So ID integer primary key. And I have a to-do title, for instance. And let's say I don't have more at the moment. That's going to be enough for my demonstration. And I'll relaunch SQLPage. So here we go. Okay, it launched again. And now it should have taken my migrations into account. Let's see if it had. Yes, found 1 migrations. Okay, and it runs the init migrations, so it worked. And now I have my to-dos table. And now I can select title from to-dos. Okay. So I have all my to-dos displayed here. Great. And I have no item at the moment inside my list. I can customize this text. So this no item text here, we have an empty title here. So let's add no to do yet as the empty title. Okay, and now it says no to do yet. Okay, maybe I want to create a to-do, so it would be a great example to show how to insert data inside a SQL database from SQLPage. So I'll use empty link. And let's say I want to call it create.sql as empty link. So what I'm doing here is creating a link. I forgot a comma here. So you see here, no to do yet now has a link, and it will lead me to a new page. When I click this no to do yet, it will allow me to create a new to do. So create one. Okay, so now I want to create this create.sql file to create a to-do. Okay, so let's go and create.sql. And let's say I have a hello world at the moment as component and hello world as title. Okay, so now if I click create one, yes, great. So I'm on create.sql. You can see the URL here, and I'm here. So I don't want it to say hello world. I want it to have a form. So what we'll go is go to the SQLPage documentation and look whether we have a component that does what we need. So we want a form here. Great, we have a component called form, and we have a very complete documentation with a lot of examples. So we'll do something very basic at the moment. Just select form as component. I can just copy and paste from the documentation. I love to do that. Okay. Okay, great. We have a form now. We don't want it to be a form. Create to-do item. I'm customizing it. And we have to choose our form fields. So I'll just call it to-do. So it's going to be the name of my field, and the placeholder is what do you have to do? Okay. So let's save this, reload the page. Okay. So we selected the form component. We opened the form component, which is the rectangle you see here. We customized it with a few attributes, such as a title and a name for the validation button. And then we started creating things inside the form. So each each item returned by a query inside the form component is going to be a different form field inside the form. And here we created a single form field, and it's called to do, and it has a placeholder saying, what do you have to do? It's great, but maybe I don't want the name to be displayed here. The name is going to be very important then to reference what the user has typed here. But I'm going to have a look at the documentation and see if I can do better. So I have a name, but I also have a label here. So I will customize the label so that what it displays here is not the internal name of the field. So I called my field to do, but it's going to be displayed as to-do item, for instance. Great. Okay, I have a to-do item, and now I can enter my to-do item. So let's go. Let's enter something. Hello world. Create a to-do item. Okay, and nothing happens because the action for the form is the create.sql page itself, and we haven't written any SQL query to insert the to-do inside the database. So that's what we are going to do now. And we are going to do it at the very beginning of the page, so that when the user submits a to-do item, we want to insert it into the database and maybe redirect the user to the home page. So we'll do a simple insert statement. So insert into to-dos, and then my to-do have just a title, and the primary key will be incremented automatically. So to-dos title, great, values, and now is going to be the interesting part because I want to reference what the user entered inside the to-do inside the to-do form field. So what I'm going to do here is use a prepared statement placeholder with the syntax of colon and then a name. And so I'm using insert values to do, and it's going to insert my to-do item because the page is going to be loaded with a posts variable with the name to do and the value of whatever we put inside the field. So what we do here is we run an insert, and for the value we put exactly what we have taken from the post value. Okay, and then we will have a to do. So let's try this. Let's say hello world, create to do item. Okay, so the page loaded again. We don't see anything. We know we have this form displayed on the page, but let's go back to the home page and see whether it worked. Great, it worked. You see, we have our hello world to do here. So it worked. But we have a problem now because I went back to the create page. And if I go back to the home page, I go back to the home page and let's say I create a new to-do here. What is happening here? Create another to-do item. Okay, I have my other to-do. But what happens if I reload the page here? Oh, we have a problem. So I reloaded the page without submitting the form, and we have a problem because we tried to insert null into the database because I loaded the page without submitting the form, so without submitting the to-do, and the database doesn't accept null as a to-do value. We loaded the page without submitting the form, so column to-do is null here. So we cannot do that. So what I'll do here instead is I want to skip this insert when the page is loaded and we don't have a to-do to insert because the page was initially loaded. So select insert into to-dos, select to-do, and then if I do a select, I can add a where clause, and I can where to-do is not null. So this way, I'm just not going to insert anything into the database if to-do is null, and it works. I can load my page and come back to the home page, and it works. And I load create.sql, it works, and I can insert do the dishes. Okay, great. Let's see if it worked. Great, it works. So now I'm only inserting a to-do if there is a to-do, if to-do is not null. Okay, maybe I want to come back to the home page when I submit a to-do instead of just displaying the to-do form again. So what I'll do here is I'll add a returning to my insert. So I'll do an insert returning. This is all just standard SQL. This is not specific to SQLPage. So let's do returning. And what do I want to return? A new component. So what component do I have for a redirect? I'm just going to look into the documentation. Oh, great, I have a redirect component. Okay, and it has a single parameter called link. So we'll call the redirect component, redirect as component. And I redirect to the home page. So the link is just going to be slash as a link. Okay, and let's see if it worked. My third to-do, create to-do, and great, it worked. I'm back on the home page and I have my third to-do. Okay, it's great, but now on the home page, I don't have a link to create a new to-do because I had the link only when the list was empty. So maybe I want to add a button here. So let's look inside the documentation. If I have a button component, great, I do. And I have a button component. Let's take one of the examples here. Well, we have beautiful components here. So great. I'm just going to copy and paste it. I'm going to rename it to add new to do. Okay. And let's see if it worked. Great, I have an add new to do button. And I want to change the link in order to link to create.sql. Okay, did it work? Great, it works. I'm back on add new to do. And maybe I don't want the icon to be this little pen. So I'll change the icon. The icon is selected by name from a big library of icons called tableau icons. So we have a lot of them. And I'm going to search for an icon for new. Circle plus looks great. So let's use circle plus. Called circle plus. Okay, back here. And great, I have my new icon inside my to-do button. Okay, so we built our small to-do application in just a few minutes and a few simple SQL queries. I hope you liked that, and I hope you built great applications with SQLPage. Good luck to you, and thank you for your attention.